Some say that the Donner Party made a tragic mistake when taking their new route over the Sierras when they headed out too late in the year, leaving in May 1846, without enough supplies or food to make it through a winter if something were to go wrong on their journey. As we now know, a long, cold winter followed, and it's been said that the members resorted to cannibalism in order to survive, eating each other's corpses, perhaps following some kind of rituals of spirit or methodology of worship unknown to most of mankind.
Others might say that the Donner Party knew damn well what they were doing and that they planned ahead by bringing along their food. Of the 83 members of the Donner Party who were trapped in the mountains, only 45 survived to reach beyond Donner Pass in California. Those most likely to die were children under 6, adults over 35, particularly men, and those traveling alone. Even those women who eventually died survived longer than the men. 5 people died before reaching the Sierra Nevada mountains.
The single men who accompanied the Donners fared very poorly.
The Donner Party's methodology of alleged survival was the start, I think, of disclosures of dark pasts once known to our ancestors. It was the first documented occurrence of cannibalism in the Americas by those who practiced long-forgotten Druidism-type religions. I submit that the Donner Party was the start of horrible disclosures. Perhaps some of the Donner Party simply never left Truckee and started that town based on these dark pasts and dark deeds, constructing for themselves a hive of abuse. Locked in a forest where secrecy could flourish via snow-bound solitude, and through a euphemism for keeping things within the town known as the Truckee Way. A euphemism for secrecy with something to hide. And I'll submit that the Kylie Rodney disappearance, the search efforts, and media and social circuses that followed her going missing was the start of efforts to rebalance that universe.
There are no coincidences, nor accidents, involved in the antics-filled aftermath of nationwide and worldwide media attention on the Kylie Rodni case. Known, as they all line up and point to the same thing. At least for me. I'll also submit, going into this subject will shake you hard, perhaps to your core. I believe that all of us being shaken is part of what she wanted to accomplish. She was aiming for something as unmistakably memorable as Truckee's initial residence dinner menus. Some things are usually too painful and difficult to talk about. For most, those things lie ahead, and viewer discretion is advised. We're heading down the Lost Trails here, on our way to the Lost Trail Lodge, to continue shining Kylie's light on Truckee for however long it takes.
Much like her ancestors, Kiely Rodni planned ahead, too. She knew what was coming down the pike from an early age, and she knew there was no way she could really stop it without sacrificing. Kylie left behind over 40 clues for us to be guided by, and stand as a beacon of hope for the Truckee community that she will not be forgotten, and that she's up there somewhere, watching over us, and that her messages would be known. Her SOS to the world, hoping we'd someday find them, consider them, and understand her message's importance at a time when the media still attempts to tamp down discussions about satanic ritual child abuse while promoting a demonic, lost trail type of Satanism.
She wanted to teach us all that sometimes you just don't, don't. It costs too much. It has lifelong effects on both people and leads to only one logical conclusion. Someone wins. Someone dies. The victim is too young to win initially. and the wreckage which follows often further perpetuates their inability to fight back and regain control of their own fate.
In order to tell her story and her messages, and how I feel confident enough in what's being said to go ahead and state these things, we need to start with my beginnings. You see, I was also raised in a mountain small town by bearded hippies. And I was also trapped inside of a cabin during winter nights with drunken and drugged adults. I had to leave myself in order to survive my ordeals, and have been burdened with a photographic memory which makes most things unforgettable. Like Kylie, perhaps.
I remember the drunk lunatic with a bushy face getting, well, you know. I remember Dad saying, "You don't want me to die, do you?" after his many escapades. It took me 35 years to be able to finally tell him I remembered, both audio and video of most memories. These videos are my effort to save you some time and try and unlock the chains you've been bound by, while continuing to try and find Kylie and her messages.
After realizing at 35 years old that I had to take a stand to survive, I broke that chain which had been binding me my whole life and stood up for my son and made damn sure Grandpa wasn't going to molest his grandkids. Dad knew at the time I was telling him that one day I'd stumble forward and his deeds would be known. He was waiting for that day, drinking himself into oblivion at all hours of the day, and getting up in the middle of the night for more snorts of straight whiskey at 60 years old, himself unable to fully justify the harm he'd done in molesting me and my brother. My brother died in January of this year, himself an alcoholic, and burdened his whole life with the grooming involved in our youth. I wasn't a willing subject either, and fought back, shouting out things like "Bad Dad," starting when I was only 3. It was not okay with me. He'd put on a record of Peter and the Wolf after the mid-afternoon jaunts on his lap. He knew it would calm me down, and in hindsight, he knew also that one day I'd be just like Peter and come a-knocking with a vengeance to protect my own. He knew that he'd started a blood sport when he began molesting me. A sport where someone always wins, until they don't win. And so it begins, my journey to find her, to find Kylie, and to find a way to honor her name. By learning her story after long hours studying her, we've learned that Truckee, California is a hive of evil with decades of secrecy, and is a forgotten land from a forgotten time long ago, where adults asked far too much of their children, consuming their flesh and consuming souls. In sharing that information, we honor her. I truly believe she wanted to be the poster child for efforts to stop satanic ritual abuse and all other forms of child abuse.
You see, Kylie knew that we'd know enough to want to know more, and that once we looked, we'd learn enough to know enough. And thereby we'd all learn what to do. And she knew we would care enough hearing her heartbreaking story to be shaken enough to be sure she did not die in vain.
Much like Gabby Petitot's stark story led to society's examination of ways to spot and prevent domestic abuse, Kylie Rodni's story now places the world's spotlight on the topic of SRA and child abuse, and her goal was simple: for us to learn about it, how to observe for it, and how to stop it. Kylie wanted to live forever in an odd future sort of way after she disappeared. She wanted to shine her light on Truckee and its plight, and for all of us to do something about it. Long live. Kylie.